the long-awaited post-series episode of Banditland Boulevard. Read what it says on the hat. It doesn't say back-to-back, but it says National Lacrosse League Champions 2024. Tony's got like a similar hat. It's not the same one as mine. But the point is, guys, we
Sixth
made a
time.
Victory Series episode last year, and guess what? Deja vu, we're doing the same damn thing this year. The
Yes, sir.
Bandits are six-time champions. They
Love it.
defeat the Albany Firewolves like I said they would in 2 games. Clean sweep of them. They may have swept us in the regular season. We swept them where it matters the most, and that is the postseason in the finals. The All-New York Finals has come to an end.
Yep.
Everybody hopefully has gotten the chance to get their Bandits merchandise, their championship merchandise. This solidifies the D word, Tony. Dynasty. That's right. We're throwing that word around here on this show, Banditland Boulevard. The Buffalo Bandits, 4 straight finals appearances. Well, COVID got in the middle of them, but if you exclude COVID, that's 4 straight finals appearances, 2 wins out of 4 appearances. We're going for that 3-peat next year, Tony. That's my mentality. When you're at that mountain still, just keep winning. But 6 championships is absolutely phenomenal. The first time this team went back-to-back since 1992, 1993. I would ask you how you're feeling, but I already know the whole response.
Of course. It's always a plus. And got a big smile on my face knowing that the fact that they won back-to-back again. And now we are tied for the most championships for a franchise alongside with, I believe, the Rochester Nighthawks, if that's the case need be. But you know what? If we get that 3-peat, we'll be known as the all-time champs of the National Lacrosse League. And folks, we always want to say this is because of the fact that the boys in black and orange proved time and time again. Yeah, first half didn't look like we were going to defend the crown, but
not at all.
According to the boys, they say keep on fighting, keep moving forward. We go ahead and sign Paul Dawson. We go ahead and sign Connor Farrell, and that just turned it around itself. Because then we relied on playing smart defensively, protecting Vince, and scoring the goals when we need to. And again, the magic number is 14 in my book.
Yeah, and in that game too, they scored 15. They exceeded that
15.
magic number. And, well, I mean, if we want to look back, I mean, on the series, we will. But since that Panther City game, you want to talk about their record for the rest of the year, including playoffs, where the Bandits – in fact, swept the entire playoffs, went 5-0, undefeated in the playoffs. Something that they didn't even do last year, in a year where they were looking great the whole time. Sure, a lot of those wins last year were very, very close in overtime-like fashion, and they had to go to a crucial Game 3 at home to win it all. This team, despite the struggles in the first half, and that's why I always say, whenever I'm talking about this team, is it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish the damn thing. And they start off 5-6 after that Vancouver game in the beginning of March. We said, you know, this team needs to figure it out. They need to sign a face-off guy, and they're back into contention. What do? They get a face-off guy before the Saskatchewan game, and since that Panther City loss, or since, what was it, March 22nd, that game, the Bandits finished the season with a record of 11-1 since that game.
That's sick.
Including playoff games. 5-0 in the playoffs. They won out the rest of the season, including beating Saskatchewan. They beat Philadelphia on the road. They squashed Las Vegas, and they squashed Calgary. And going into the playoffs, and I think the craziest thing, if you want to talk about this playoff, and before we even get into the championship series, the Bandits were a goal away in the quarterfinals from losing their title, from losing that crown and still being 5-time champs instead of 6. All it took was one Georgia goal to ruin and spoil our whole plan. But this team never says die. This team never says quit. Josh Burns scored that goal. We go in and rip 8 straight postseason victories in a row against the Toronto Rock. I mean, we talk about owning that franchise. And then we go into Albany for Game 1, where I was sitting in the party zone behind one of the nets, and it was where the Bandits were shooting in the second and the fourth quarter. It was sort of in the corner behind the Bandits bench. Tony, that game it started off to be a little ref show. I mean, I think the first Albany goal in that game shouldn't have counted. Not only did he run through the crease, to grab the loose
Mhm.
ball, but he also stepped in the crease to scoop the ball and score. I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of those type of games again for game one. They start off, they get a quick goal early that shouldn't have counted. The ref on our end, we were sitting next to the guy that wears the fireman's hat, who sits in
Mhm.
106. That dude
Sure.
was chirping the ref the whole night. I mean, though that ref crew, I think they were the same crew from the Georgia
The
Swarm
Georgia
playoff
game.
game.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are garbage, but the Bandits, like they usually are in the playoffs, they were undeniable. Sure, the refs sucked, but the Bandits said, I'm not going to let the refs decide this game for us. That
Yeah.
fourth quarter, I mean, talk about your secondary guys in that game one and punching them in the mouth in game one. Kyle Buchanan had a beautiful little behind the back scoop and score goal. Dane Smith is just ripping shots from the inside of the restraining line, going top shelf. Ian McKay, Tehoka Nanakoke. I mean, if they play forward or transition from the Bandits, they probably had a good shot at scoring that night, and a good handful of them did. I mean, it wasn't a game like where Josh Burns scores 7 and everybody else
Right.
maybe scores 1. Everybody got a little piece of that pie. Dane Smith, another game with double-digit points in that game
Mhm.
one, and Josh Byrne, I think he was close to double digits in that game, but our secondary guys were clicking, and our top guys were clicking too. Chase Fraser was getting under their skin, which I love
Yep.
to see from a guy like him. And by the way, you need to re-sign that guy's contract because he
Yep.
proved in game 2 especially he's playing for a contract. He wants to keep this winning thing going here in Buffalo. But going back to game 1, everybody got a piece of that pie. They successfully punched them in the mouth and sent them packing like with their tails in between their legs, but right before game 2, which occurred 24 hours later.
Yeah. If you want to talk about points, let's talk about the amount of goals that we had. And one player alone stands out who contributed on almost every single one, and that's Dane Smith. He
Yeah,
had 11 points out of the 12 goals that the Bandits had that very
he
night.
was
And
everywhere.
like you said, he could just be a leader in the assist column and give apples all day if he wanted to. I mean, Josh Byrne had ended up with 7. He had 3 goals, 4 assists that first night. Again, secondary scoring coming to known the man. And like, look at Chris Kluche. He had
Yep.
2 goals. Bucky with 1, Nanakoke
Tehoka.
with 1,
Yep.
McKay with 1. People are contributing. It's an all-out team effort. And if you guys are going to just rely on only 2 players on that squad, which is Josh Byrne and Dane Smith to score all your goals, you're not coming out as a victor of that game. But the trust and the teamwork and the efforts that the secondary has brought to the table, like we've been talking about it since before even the playoffs begin, that's what wins games too. Defensively, keeping them under 10 goals, as the last 2 times we played them in the regular season, they had an average of 14, 15 per game against us. But to that first game with keeping them under 10, that was a statement game. That
Oh,
was
it
to say,
was.
look, youngsters, experience wins. Defensively smart and goaltending smart wise, they kept the youth under 10 goals, which was surprising, probably to Albany's team, but a wake up call because they obviously in game 2 woke back up and got their
Oh,
offense going again because they kept toe to toe with us to the very end. And that what scares, experienced teams like, hey, we're even though we're at that age group, we're like, well, we have the experience, but we don't have the speed like we used to. But again, it could go either way. Speed and youth versus experience and slow motion. I don't know, but take it as you will. But again, experience proved its worth as we go on to win back-to-back titles because of the signing, and I'm going to say this again, of the signing of Paul Dawson added to this team. And after that rally, that party rally that we had that Sunday, the day after,
oh, where he
he
said, I'm
wants to
not
come
leaving.
back.
Yep.
He does not want to leave Buffalo. Why is that? Because he knows this team is a winning team, and the D is standing for dynasty. I like that saying.
Damn right. And I want to give the Bandits fans a huge shout out for that game 1. Right before the anthems, you could
Yeah,
hear clear as day if you watch that game again on ESPN Plus. The Let's Go Bandit chants. Every time Josh Burns scored a goal and the people in front would hit the drum to say Let's Go Wolves, we'd shout MVP. Bandit
yeah.
fans stood out on that game
Kudos to
1.
you guys.
And trust me, driving east for 4 straight hours is not a fun drive. So
No.
I think the Bandits for winning that game because it would have been a long car ride back home if they were to lose that game one. And it sent Albany into a little tizzy like, oh, we got to play these guys in 24 hours in front of 19,070 people
19 sold out
wearing
thousand fans.
orange and black colors. And that game, too, I was saying run up the score because when it was 8-3, I'm like, make it 10-3, make it 12-3.
Just
Because
don't stop.
when you have guys like Ty Kurtz and Alex Simmons on that team, the game's not over until the clock hits triple zeros. And
Right.
they came back from a down 5, I think twice. They got within 2 goals. And we're
Yep.
like, oh, here we go again. You know, it's almost like the mammoth from the east side. They never go away. I think it
Nope.
was 8-3. It turned out to come, what was it,
8-7
8-7 at
or
halftime?
9-7 at half.
9-7 at
9-7 at
half.
half.
And then the fourth quarter comes around. Oh, they scored early in the third to make it 9-8. And then,
Yep.
I mean, the Bandits are cooking in that fourth quarter. I think they're up 15
Mhm.
to, or maybe 14-9, I think it was. The game ended 15-13. But
Yep.
it was just back and forth the whole way. Chase Frazier with 5 goals in that second game. I thought if I was the one giving out the MVP, I would have given it to Frazier.
Yeah.
Just for that game 2 alone, because if he doesn't score 3, the Bandits are at least going to overtime or probably losing that game. He was
Right.
the difference maker in that game too, even though Kluche got a piece of that goal scoring pie and Josh, I mean, the hidden ball trick where Josh Byrne gets tackled by 4 guys and Chase Frazier throws in the back of the net. Swenny didn't even know where the ball was. But I was watching it over at the WGR studios on the TV, and I saw
Sure.
Frazier had it the whole time. And I was like,
Yep.
shoot the ball. They all think Josh has it. Shoot the ball. He does, puts it right in the back of the net. And if you were listening to Sabres live, I think maybe a couple
Hmm.
days after they won the title, Josh Byrne was saying, we practice that. A lot of times it doesn't really go well in practice, but we sometimes we try it in the games and we catch people off guard. Like it's a lot harder than it looks to sell
Mhm.
that. Oh, I have to sell this and make it look like I have the ball. Whatever
Right.
Josh did was fantastic. They all thought he had the ball. Chase Fraser just
Yep.
throws it in the empty net like he's playing in the backyard. It was awesome. That trophy that they won looks a hell of a lot better than the one that they won last year. I think the one
Mhm.
this year actually looks more like a trophy than anything else.
Yeah.
The one last year, I mean, at least they won the trophy, but it looked like a house league hockey like first place trophy. This one looks a lot better, and it's probably a lot easier to drink celebratory drinks out of after the game too. Just they have the cup there
They
right in
actually
the
have the
middle.
cup
So
inside it. Yep.
I'm just so happy for these guys too. I mean, back to back, they established a dynasty. They're going to be kings of the league again. They're on top of the mountain for the entirety of next year too. They got
Mhm.
I mean, I guarantee you there's going to be more season ticket holders coming into this year as well.
Of course.
I mean, they never said die. 11-7 and they go undefeated in the playoffs. At one point they were 5-6. Like that is the part where I'm like, that should be the turnaround of the season. They battled adversity last year with all the injuries. This year, they battled the unified standings, and they're the first team since probably the early 90s with the unified standings to win the title. So,
Mhm.
what are these other teams' fan bases going to say now? What are the Toronto fans going to say now? I want to see what the Toronto Rock are going to do next year. We
Mhm.
whooped their butt so bad last year in the playoffs. They went out and traded for Mark Matthews and they signed Chris Boucher. And they still got swept by the Bandits this year. I want to see what crazy trade they make in the offseason this year to try to beat the Bandits again. I want to see what the Nighthawks do or what when Dyson Williams comes up with Albany next year and see if the Bandits and Firewolves want to run it back in the finals again next year. It's going to be so fun to see, but I couldn't be more proud of this team, dude. I mean, I always had the feeling in the back of my mind, even when times were low, like
Mhm.
I'm like, all we need is a face-off guy. And not only that, we go above and beyond getting the face-off guy in Connor Farrell. They go out and trade a couple number 2 picks for Paul Dawson, and he turned out to
Mhm.
be a stud. And the Bandits are in a great spot right now, but could also be a problem. They have 4 top 20 picks this year. I was talking to my brother who's been on this show a bunch of times. Take a
Sure.
couple of those top 20 picks if maybe an offensive forward is a free agent and he's not returning. take a couple of those picks and go trade for Zed Williams. You think Zed Williams wants to play for a rebuilding, retooling, awful Colorado Mammoth team next year? Or does he want to
No.
play? He's from Silver Creek, New York. I think he lives in
Yeah.
Salamanca in the off season.
Hmm.
He said, I mean, he said that there's no crowd like Banditland. Let him experience this. Paul Dawson flat out said, I hated playing against you guys, but now I love playing for you guys. Zed Williams, I guarantee you, would say the same exact thing. But this is a good problem to have, Tony. Steve Dietrich needs to be in the conversation of GM of the year, even though the Brad McCauley trade was a bit of a head scratcher, but we used those two number 2 picks and traded for Paul Dawson, who rejuvenated this defense and still
Yeah.
has 4 top 20 picks and won back-to-back titles. He has to be in that conversation of GM of the year.
Yeah, I would completely agree, especially with the moves he made that at first seemed really, like you said, was a head scratcher to a lot of the fans here going, why would you get rid of Brad McCauley? He was a part of a championship team last year, and he was a good, like a one-timer type goal scorer. And it sucked because of his job. And again, with like Max Adler again, hey, happy retirement, by the way,
Yep.
Max. We wish you nothing but good luck in your future endeavors. But for Brad McCauley to be traded, we were all going, why? Why
Yeah.
get rid of Brad? Brad
Yep.
was one of those guys who would have probably stuck around for another 2-3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
But again, they said no. And we were all like, wow, this is kind of sad. And on top of it, we were going through that 11-game stretch with the being 5-6 and going, well, no face-off guy. We don't have a lefty anymore that
No
could do the
physicality.
one-timers as much as
Yep.
Brad. And I'm like, well, what do we do now? Until they said, okay, now we're going to get Connor Farrell. We got our face-off guy. So I'm like, all right, that's a jump that we could use. But then they pick up Paul Dawson for, like you said, with the trades that we made, huge on the defensive part, because not only did Matt Vince probably have a big smile on his face, but Priolo, the guys on defense going, we have another tall, strong defenseman that's not going to take nobody's shit. And believe me, when I say this, he has proven time and time again to be the Jay McKee of the Buffalo Bandits right now. Block shots, none the man. I mean, being like that
Hard-hitting defenseman.
second goaltender and never giving up on anybody. He was, even though he looked in a way, he's like, I can't run anymore, but I can definitely play if he definitely gets that chance to hit somebody. And he hit so many people. Unbelievable. And
at his age, he's 40 years old.
And he still got it.
Yep. And he's coming back next year, damn it. You know he's going to come back next year.
I'm so happy he said that. I would love to have Paul Dawson back for another 2 years if he can go 2. If he can go 2, great. And I'd be happy with him retiring after that. That's fine. That's good with me. But other than that, guys, though, but picking Steve Dietrich, let's go back to him. He has really become like the GM of National Lacrosse League itself. You can't just say the team for the Buffalo Bandits, but for National Lacrosse League itself. He wasn't even a part of that category for even being the GM of the year. Note to self, let's start voting for him next year because he deserves it.
For real.
And I think for the fact of what he has done to not only confuse the opposition, but he also confused the fan base at first going,
what are you
Brad
doing?
McCauley's gone.
Yep.
Sorry to say that, guys, but we got Farrell and we got Dawson. Do you want to win another championship? I would have said yes in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And we did.
On record on this show, we said this team does not suck. They need a couple pieces.
They don't suck.
They need to add a couple pieces, and they'll be right back in that championship conversation.
And
we didn't say that these guys were a surefire lock at winning the title because the lights were looking too bright. They got swept by this Albany team in the regular season.
That's what scared me too going into this series.
But I mean, with the performance last year, I said give me the best team that we played the Toronto Rock. They were the best team. And
they thought they were
15-3. The only other team they lost to, including playoffs, that wasn't the Bandits, was the San Diego Seals. The Bandits beat them 4 times, including twice in the regular season, twice in the playoffs. The only other team to beat them was San Diego. They swept Albany. They swept Rochester. They beat all these teams, and then they ran into their nemesis again that they can't seem to beat, blowing an 8-4 fourth quarter lead in game 2, which would have been a major swing game going to game 3 back at home if they held on to that game. So many what ifs in that series, and I'm not questioning it at all. This whole playoff thing, going to the Georgia game. Oh, what would happen if we beat Halifax, if we held on to an 8-2 lead against Halifax? Would we get the 3 seed instead of 2 or instead of the 4 seed? What would have happened there? I mean, just some memories of this year alone. It
Hmm.
felt nice being like having the mentality of, all right, we're the top dogs. Like that was something new because the last time that happened was after '08, and I was kind of young to remember what that felt like. It was kind of it was fun that walking around that whole year, even though times were looking tough, thinking, okay, we're still at the top though. People are still chasing after us. That's a good feeling to have. And you're
Sure.
not a rebuilding team like Rochester or Colorado or New York, who's not even a team anymore. They moved to Ottawa next year, and that's going
Yep.
to be pretty cool to see. Um, I don't know. The overtime game against Saskatchewan was fun. The St. Patty's
Yep.
Day game against the Toronto Rock was fun. The banner raising night, and we're going to get to re-experience that next December against
That's
San
right.
Diego. That was fun. We felt like we punched them in the mouth. The chicken wing eating contest, Tony. I mean, that was
I
that
think
was
I'm done
awesome
eating
too.
chicken wings. I'll tell you that right now.
I'm looking at the trophy right now.
Well,
That was a pretty fun night, and especially the fact that we got a big win against Colorado that night at home. That was
hmm,
fantastic. Sweeping the Mammoth was a huge highlight of the season, or it should have been a huge highlight of this season. Yeah, we had some rough spots along the way, but I mean, a team that came off of 4 straight seasons, going 14-4.
sure.
I'll take an 11-7 season if you're going to guarantee me a championship. Josh
Absolutely.
Byrne and Dane Smith leading the league in points. That's a great memory to have. I mean, the list goes on and on. 7 losses, but we have a shit ton of positive things to say because this team is just so good. And they've been consistently good in the clutch, in the trenches for a long time now.
Hmm. Yeah, you want to talk about this team, how much it's grown from learning a pattern of trying to find their rhythm again, especially being after the championship from the prior to winning against Colorado and going into this year saying to ourselves, well, we got to defend our crown now. The light's on us, so we got to make sure it's not too bright so we can see through into our next passageway. So, and again, at first, the first 11 games didn't look so promising, and we were thinking, well, it was a good run, 1 year,
Go get them
and
next
then
year.
all of
Yep.
a sudden something just said they opened up the door and going, can we give it a shot to see if we can bring you guys back? And sure enough, we got the signings of Farrell and Dawson, and they brought us back to life. It was like the spark that we needed to say, hey, now we've got 2 players in play that one has a great experience on defense. Two, we have a face-off guy again. We've got to test him out in the waters, and he proved, hey, that 52, 53% rate, I think he had all season long,
Yeah.
including playoffs. You got to admire the fact that this kid came out of nowhere, filled the void, and became the man that we are now in love with because of the fact of how well he has done in the faceoff dot. And now we could look forward to perfect, like, no, not perfect, but better himself on the faceoff dot going against these tougher centermen that have been challenging him all season long. And you know what? Max did that too with the 2 years that he had, but Farrell comes in and wins his first championship ever with one of the best teams in the league.
When going into
So
the
what does that
season,
tell you?
he had no intention of playing box going into the season.
Nope. And they said, well, we need you.
And then
And we
all of a
signed him.
sudden, on this random, Tuesday in February, he gets signed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Which
oh,
is
here,
great.
here we go. Or maybe the beginning of March or something. I think it was a random Tuesday in March. They're like, all right, I guess he's coming up. Like,
Yeah.
let's run this thing. And the fans love him. I mean, every time this dude wins a face-off, the 100 level
They
at least,
cheered.
it erupts, which is great. But I think the spark plug of this team is Johnny T. Johnny Tavares behind the bench, calm, cool, and collected.
Mm-hmm.
Except when he's dealing with the referees in the Toronto series and the Georgia series, he was. I mean, they had Teddy
Especially
Cordingly.
Albany too.
Teddy Cordingly was like trying to calm him down the whole time. Like he's like, okay, don't get a bench minor here. You better shut up. Like I understand these refs suck, but he'd be the first guy. Johnny T's a guy that you want to go to war with. He always
Yeah.
has your team's back. He's out there lacing up his cleats and he's throwing around. If they're missing a lefty forward in practice, he's picking up a stick and he's running drills with those guys.
Sure.
I mean, he has won 4 titles as a player, 2 as a coach. He's going to be coming back next year. If you don't think this dude wants a three-peat, you guys got another thing coming. This team, until proven otherwise, until maybe a Toronto or maybe an Albany or maybe a San Diego or a Rochester team could shut this team down in the playoffs, you know who we're already picking for our odds of winning the championship next year. We're picking
Of
the
course,
band
got to
for a
be us.
three-peat. And
Of
we
course.
want 6. I had that chant going in Albany too. Everybody was on board. We got 6. Let's go get 7 now. I mean,
Be the best in the league.
you guys got some free agents that you got to re-sign. I think 95 has to be a lock. He has
Or
to be a
it's got to be
lock.
4 years or better for that man. He
Oh
deserves
my
it.
God. I mean, Josh Byrne, in the middle of the season, joined the 5-year contract club. Dane Smith, I believe, in the offseason last year, signed a 5-year deal.
Yep.
Chase
They're
has
not
got to
going
be there
anywhere.
too. Chase has to be there too. He was the difference maker in the series clinching game too.
Yes, he was.
Nets 5. I mean,
Mhm.
a total reverse of what happened in 2022. When the lights were the brightest and the backs were against the wall, he didn't show up. It was just Dane and Josh in that game 3, and they came up 2 goals short. Last year, he shows up for game 3. I expected him to get a contract extension after last year. No,
Right.
he got a 1 year. Well, he did. He got a 1-year contract, which I'm like, I mean, all right, but like, it has to be over 3 years this year. He's got
This
to
time it
join
has to be.
Dane. He's got to join Josh in that 5-year club. We have the money to do it. We have the picks that we can trade to pay this guy. We could
Hmm.
always trade back. We could always trade for maybe a veteran forward like Zed Williams. You think Zed Williams is looking forward to going back to Denver in December, playing for a team
Right.
that might win 6 games next year? It's going through a
Mm,
total rebuild, retool. I mean,
sure.
I think it's gonna take them a couple years to fight back to the top. And even in the year that they won the championship, they weren't all that. They were what, 10-8, 9-9 when they beat us. So
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't all world, is what I'm trying to say when they went to the finals. Like they weren't as dominant as the Bandits were. But if I want to give out my season MVP, my my season defensive player of the year, my season MVP, I gotta go with Josh Byrne for that. If I want to go with a fan favorite, I'll go with Connor Farrell, I think.
Hmm. Yep.
Defensive player of the dude. Can I link Paul Dawson and Matt Vince together?
If you want to do that
Can we
too, you
do
could.
that? Matt Vince,
Yeah.
dude, I think this is the first time we mention him. Outside of one playoff game, game 2, which we won by the way, he held every team to under 10 goals. Paul Dawson, when Steve Priolo had a struggling first start to his season, he comes
Yep.
in and completely turns his game around like the mentor that he is. I'll go with Josh Byrne MVP. Goal scoring,
Absolutely.
assist, machine. Fan favorite, Connor Farrell. Dude, I mean, we loved Brandon Francis, but whenever he took a face-off and whenever he would win, we didn't like stand up and cheer. That's how much
Right.
we desperately needed a face-off guy. So I'll give the Milkman that.
Yep.
Defense, I'm linking Vince and Paul Dawson together. I mean, Vince is 41, Paul Dawson's 40. Combined their age, they're 81 years old. But they were the backbone of this defense and goaltending this year. Without them, we don't win anything. So
No.
there's my awards.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it's basically it's an all team effort for me. Bravo to every single part who played their part from number 1 to number 96 is on that roster, I believe. I don't think there was anybody beyond 97 and 98 on their team, but
No, I think
from 1 to
Highfield wore
96 who's
96.
played their
Yep.
part. It could be one game, it could be two, it could be a whole season, it could be a half a season. But everyone that has been a part of that team besides Emerson Clark, you cannot I can bow my head in proudness because of how much they contributed to this team. They played their part, they did their role. Basically, it was an all-team effort. I mean, from start to finish, even though it was rocky at first, and we thought, not the season this year, guys, huh? But all of a sudden, it was like, okay, the road's starting to get smoother. It's starting to get forward, and we're starting to go forward. I like this,
Well,
but
yeah, I
you know
mean,
what?
that and shout out to guys like Shanahan filling in for Vince for 4 games. And shout out to
Yes.
new guys like Corey Highfield and Christian Watts who got their feet wet
Yep.
in the sport. And Zach Belter, dude. First time we
Belcher
mentioned
too.
Zach Belter, he gets a call up, immediate physical presence, great
Hmm.
defender in the finals and the semifinals. He had a bit of a rough game in the quarterfinals, but dude, he stepped up and beaten the you know what out of whoever that was in game 2. That was long overdue for what they did to Justin Martin back in February.
Yes.
So it was great to see everybody from the top for the top position in the organization, Terry Pagula, to the person working the concessions at the Bandits games. It was a
Yes.
whole crew and every fan that showed up to those games. It was my first year with season tickets, so it was a hell of a year for that. They put on a great
Yep.
show. I think they went 6-3 in the regular season, won every home playoff game, so I have no problem with how they played with our season tickets. But anybody watching, stick around for Banditland Boulevard because we're doing mass amounts of player interviews, alumni interviews in the off season. We'll do a whole
We'll try our
draft
best.
thing. What we're going to cover Bandits free agent and contract signings, hopefully re-signings. Stick around with us this whole summer and this fall as we rapidly approach December because the season starts in about 7 months. I mean, guys,
Yep.
get ready. 7 months is not really a long time when you're thinking of off-season stuff. We'll have draft coverage here on this show. We'll have Bandits draft coverage. We'll have free agency signings. We'll have player interviews and alumni interviews. It's going to be a packed summer. It's going to be a packed fall, so stick around. Anyone that's watching, we just completed year 3 of this show. We want to thank all of our listeners, all of our viewers, YouTube, Spotify, anybody that joins us, and anyone that's going to come back. Because, Tony, we're coming back stronger than death next year, covering what could be a three-peat next year. It's going to be a very important year at Banditland Boulevard, covering the 2025 season. But congratulations again to the team, from the top position to the bottom position in this organization. Everybody's getting a ring. Everybody earned that ring. On to 2025. We got 6. The new hashtag is hashtag we want 7.
We want 7. Boy, does that sound so
Just
sweet
keep
in
winning.
Everybody's ears. Just keep winning and just don't suck.
We were chasing 5 for so long, Tony, and the fact that we have an opportunity to say we want 7, it's the guys on the field.
Of.
It's the coaches. It's the GM. This team is just so damn good.
Oh, and also when we were mentioning about JT, a friend of ours that we all know from the Bandits Mafia, Dennis Gore, says we should mention the fact that I think John Tavares himself deserves to have a statue outside of KeyBank Center.
Yes, he does.
So we would love to have a petition going on right now. For those of you, if we do set something up, and we would like to have your vote and say our confidence, saying that Johnny T deserves to have his own personal statue outside of KeyBank Center, I think that's a yes in my book, because
put him next to the French Connection, bro. Yep.
A lot of credit for what he has done for not only the game of lacrosse, but to this team itself. To, from the teachings of him being a player on the team to now coaching and guiding the youth and whatever, the Six Nations Chiefs as well. He's also coaching there as well.
Bro. He is the Bandits.
He is Mr. Bandit himself. And we would love our fan base to get a petition going to get a statue in his honor in front of KeyBank Center. He deserves it, and I know a lot of the fans say yes to this too.
Get it going. If there's like a Kickstarter
Let's get it going.
or like a GoFundMe campaign, I'd be the first one to donate to that.
Me too.
Guarantee you. So,
Me
but
too.
A huge weight lifted. I mean, we saw that the lights were bright for the Bandits. They didn't back down at that second half of the season. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. And this should be a lesson for next year. If they start off 0-1 again next year, you know what this team is capable of. If they start 5-6 next year, which I doubt happens with this team, if you make the right offseason moves, you just got to be patient. Not every season is going to be sunshine, rainbows, 14-4. We're going to sweep everybody. We're going to blow everybody out. And no, teams are going to be gunning. If you thought teams were going to be gunning for you this year, they were. They're going to be gunning for you harder next year.
It's going to get even harder next year.
Man, they got some talented players coming up next year, like Dyson Williams for Albany.
Yeah,
he'll be fantastic. But from everyone here, Trevor Howard, Tony LaMonica, Banditland Boulevard, this is year 3. If you've been following us since the beginning, or if this is your first time watching us, hit that subscribe. We want to thank Spotify. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Mitchell's Tavern. I mean, everyone that's been anyone that's been sticking around with us for this whole season, or maybe since day one. We wouldn't have this show without you guys. We'd be talking to a wall. We'd be talking to no one if it wasn't for our listeners and our sponsors and our viewers. So we'll be back with more content, more interviews. this train just getting started for this offseason. We'll have some offseason content, hopefully some Q&A stuff. We'll bring some guests on the show if they want to talk some offseason Bandits.
We're still waiting on word, guys.
Yep.
We still want to hear from you. We want to get you on board and have your input about the Buffalo Bandits. We talked nothing about lacrosse, so if you guys want on in, you just message either one of us. That's all we've been asking for.
And any
this
of the
whole
players,
season.
if any of the players,
And the players too.
If
we like to appear on the Dane and Josh show on their podcast, that would be wonderful.
Phenomenal. But
that would be awesome too.
From me, Trevor Hauer, that's Tony LaMonica, aka Boxhead 98TL. The Bandits are 6-time World Champions. I almost said Booker T, but I remember that was 5-time, not 6. But
that's right.
The trophy looked good. It's going to look even better on banner night when that thing goes center field. This has been Banditland Boulevard. 3 words, Tony. What are those 3 words?
Let's go
Bandits. 6-time, 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 6-time,
Let's
6-time,
go.
6-time
Make
champions.
It 3-peat. Make it a 7-time. Let's do this again.
Are you ready to 3-peat? Because it starts now. Let's go.
Let's